Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Friday Night Live with That Millwall Podcast. I hope everyone's well. Welcome to the show. My name's Omar. Joining me today, my regular co-hosts. First up, I'll bring in Mickey. Hello, Mickey, mate. You all right?
Yes, mate. No problem. You?
Not bad. And then the third and final co-host, as always, Neil Fizzler. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. You?
Not too bad. We've got a special guest joining us in approximately 10 minutes or so. So, obviously, if you're in the chat, say hello. Welcome, always. We appreciate your viewership. We've got Merv Payne joining us in around 10 minutes' time to discuss all things Millwall and obviously the latest ongoings. Obviously, the Lord of the Mayor show, natural. Well, there you go. All the books at the bottom there, anyway. But yeah, we're going to talk about obviously various topics. We've not done a show this week to discuss the Bournemouth game and review that. But yeah, I mean, we didn't get beaten the other day, guys, did we? We got a 1-1 draw. It wasn't too bad. What's your original thoughts after that game, Neil?
I thought that they mugged us, to be quite honest. Yeah, but they mugged us of all 3 points. I don't think they were particularly good. I think we all went into the game, certainly on our group chat, we were all a bit, that hopefully we can get something out of this. But I think apart from the first 10 minutes, we weren't outplayed at all, really, were we? A bit unlucky, I think, that we got mugged off with another absolutely awful goal just on the stroke of half time, didn't we? Just as we looked as if we were going to go in level pegging, and then in the second half, anything could happen, really. And I think we got what we deserved, and I think we deserved even more out of the game, to be quite honest.
I'll make you right, Neil. I think, as a whole, the day, I was worried going into the game. I think a lot of people were, it's either going to be 5-0 Bournemouth or potentially us sneaking it. But I think overall we played well, and I think we actually showed our merit a little bit against a good side that, we was a bit worried about it, to be honest. I thought after the Bournemouth game, how many changes he's going to make? I mean, McNamara stuck in the side and I think, grabbed the plaudits for the right reasons, Mickey. I think, give the players a chance and they seem to give their own and obviously show they're worth it.
No, definitely. I think, they looked fairly different, didn't they? They just wanted to crack on and get on with it. And it looked like it was a good team spirit again and wanted to win. So, yeah.
No, it weren't bad at all. I mean, I just thought we played well throughout. And I think it was impressive that, we matched them and kind of was a bit more brave on the ball as well. I mean, Ken Sahor stuck in the side as well, Neil. I think we'll get on to Sahor a little bit in the show, but, I think the murmurs are that he's probably going to be leaving us after Saturday's game. But I think, having that big man up top that could roll players and also bring the ball down, I feel like it was quite important at the time.
Yeah, they couldn't handle him, could they? They didn't really know how to play him. And I think he's done all right in the 2 or 3 games that he started. It's just a shame that he spent 3 months out injured, 2.5 months out injured, because I think he might have been what we were looking for, and we might be a little bit further up the league than we actually are at the minute.
Absolutely. I think, Mickey, you wanted to touch on something as well, obviously, this evening before we get into the juicier stuff. I think you wanted to...
Yeah, there's a sad message come out today from Twitter, which is from a guy called Sean Graham. You may not know about him. Sean Graham is a Scottish fella who writes for a lot of the lower leagues. He's a massive football fan. I come across Sean back in 2016 when AMS was obviously in the middle of the massive fight with Lewisham, and we were calling on football fans to get involved, join us. We needed names and stuff like that. He joined, started a conversation with me, and said, look, I'm a journalist, I'm a writer. Anything I can do to help you. If you want me to write press releases or statements or anything else you want me to do, let me know. And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I write in programs. So I said, well, look, if you can help us out, just put stuff about, get more and more people on board. So he did. So he basically wrote an article in Montrose. I think it was a team up in Scotland called Montrose. And that was the first bit. And then from there, we created a friendship. He got involved with a lot of Millwall fans. And then unfortunately he got cancer, and Millwall fans helped him get through. We kept him positive. He had this real positive attitude, and he just kept fighting it, going, it's nothing, I'll get through it, and all of this. And he got through the first one, and then he went on to the second one. Unfortunately, again, he got cancer, come back, and he was fighting it, and it looked as if great, and then it looks as if, unfortunately, he's caught C. diff, and it's just gone absolutely all wrong and downhill. And I don't know if you're listening, Sean. I know that I did tell your daughter that I would say a message at the front, and I will sound clip this and send it to her. But I've never met you in my life. I've spoken to you on the phone, and we've done some FaceTime and stuff over the years. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You took Millwall on board and didn't judge us. You even, when the press wanted to slaughter us over Everton, you basically decided to write another piece and put it in some other football outlets, saying about all the charity stuff we did, all the good we've done, British Legion soldiers, Isla, everything. And I'm just sad that we didn't get the opportunity to bring you down the Den and have some beers with you. But no doubt one day we'll be able to have those beers. And I just want to say thank you very much. And on behalf of all Millwall fans, you're an absolute pleasure, absolute lovely gentleman, and you will be sadly missed. And my heartfelt goes out to the family at this time, dealing with what they're dealing with. And hopefully, whatever we can do for your family going forward, or if there's a charity, then let us know. And I'm sure myself and a few other Millwall fans will more than happy donate to that going forward. But yeah, keep fighting, Sean. But I know it's going to be a hard game, and it's one of those days because obviously the family's now withdrawn all the treatment. So yeah, Sean Graham, top fella, and absolute pleasure to say that I called him a pal. I've never met him, but I still call him a pal, like many of you lot.
Well said, mate. Well said, mate. I mean, yeah, a couple of interactions. Obviously, Gary Muirhead there echoing what Mickey's saying there, and obviously thoughts from us. I mean, we've obviously touched on that now. I think we're going to bring Merv in a minute. Is he ready to jump in? Do you know, Mickey? I think he's at the bottom there.
Yeah, bring him in.
Let's bring him in. Hi, Merv. You right there?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Thanks for coming on. So, Merv Payne, I mean, Mickey, take it away.
Merv Payne, massive Millwall fan, author of just a few Millwall books. He's written, what have we done? We've written 4 Millwall books. He's written four so far. So he's done After the Lord Mayor's Show, Natural High, Ordinary Boys, and Because My Dad Does. You probably know Merv more from his first book, Because My Dad Does, which went around Hoff and many of the forums, probably nearly 10 years ago now, isn't it? It's got to be 8 years ago.
It was 14 years ago that started. Because it started out as I was writing something to sort of say it, some words to say at my dad's service, and it sort of went on a bit too long. So I thought, well, I can't do that, but I just carried on writing it, and I just stuck it on Hoff because I was a regular on there at the time, and quite a few people on there, like Paul Neve and a few others. For example, we used to meet up in Harry's bar and that, and obviously sort of knew of my dad, sort of met him briefly. So that was my way of sort of like, my sort of tribute to him. And yeah, it went a bit mad after that, and for about 10 years or so, people kept saying, you should turn it into a book, but I didn't really have the first idea of how to do it. And then it just sort of happened really a couple of years ago, so it all went from there. But I sort of combined it with that promotion season, because there was always a thing about, I mean, you've spoken to James Murray, haven't you, or Jim Murray?
Yes, what a character he is.
Did the Lions of the South. And I always thought it was such a shame. It was such a brilliant book. Probably, I mean, obviously we're biased, but I still think it must be one of the best football club histories going. The detail it goes into it is such a fantastic book. And it was such a shame that it had to end. Obviously it had to end somewhere, but it had to end at the start of that famous season, 87-88. And I tried to get in touch with him over the years and sort of say, when are you going to do an updated version, that sort of thing. But I understand he's something of a whiskey expert now, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He travels. Well, COVID, I think, stopped him, but he travels the world now as a big. his book is, I think, the #1 whiskey book.
It is. It's well known
in
over the world, isn't it? Yeah.
Massive,
I mean, I can understand why writing Millwall's history could lead you on to hitting the Scotch pretty hard. But yeah, unfortunately, he's not done a follow up to Lions of the South. And yeah,
and he's not going to be.
No, he's not. Fair enough.
But that's what he told us. If you listen back to the show we did with the 3 goalkeepers when we done it with
Brian King,
Brian King, we had Jim Murray, and we also had the writer on the show, and he speaks in there about the Lions of the South. He just doesn't have enough time. He's looking to make Lions of the South digital. He's looking to make it digital.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, no. So obviously the books. We're coming to some of the others in a while. Omar's sitting there. Omar's going to grill you about your football knowledge about the last couple of games, I think. So I'll let you go back to Omar.
Yeah, okay.
Just how have you been keeping in touch, obviously, with the recent performances and watching the games, or?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, with a combination of watching them when you can on iFollow or on your laptop and whatever, and following it on Twitter. And I mean, it's been fairly grim, isn't it? Really, frustrating more than anything else, because we've got the usual old problems of injuries to key players at the wrong sort of time. And obviously, the football as it is now without the fans, it's just not the same game at all. Certainly where Millwall's concerned, I honestly believe we've been hit harder by the lack of fans than most, to be honest. And it's a shame because, you know, as we saw the Bournemouth game on Tuesday, we didn't play bad. We got a really decent result at a team that's going to be up there challenging, and yet we're in one of our worst league runs for about 30 years since we came down from the old First Division, which is hard to get your head around, really, because we're not actually doing that bad. But it's just frustrating. It's just one of them where we dominate the start of the game. You know, we miss some chances. The opposition have a half chance, it goes in, and it's sort of, and you can imagine the players having the same attitude as the fans and thinking like, oh, here we go again. And that's probably how the morale starts to dip. So just got to get those fans back, really. I think that's going to be the big thing, because they give us that lift at times like that.
No, I'll make you right. I think you hit the nail on the head. Obviously, it's been a bit poor recently, and it kind of sums us up. I mean, I think right after the game the other day, Neil, we were saying how, you know, we've played well, but we've not really dominated the game, but we've had better chances. And he's right. I think if I flick through it afterwards, I think we had 6 shots on target to 2. I mean, stats don't make the game up too much, Neil. But what did you make of it yourself when obviously, like, you know, we created more chances with the ball, didn't we?
Well, I think he talks a bit of nonsense at times. Well, we're not creating enough. Yeah, that's why we're not scoring goals. It's fairly easy. Yeah, but you create chances, you score goals. That's how you win football matches. Yeah, but it's not rocket science. You put the ball in the back of the net more than they do. Yeah. And that's something that we've not been doing. We've got a kiddie on loan from Tottenham, as we've said. We've got Zahor. We've got other players. We've got Bradshaw. We're not playing to his strengths. Bavardson looks okay at times, yeah, but we're not creating the chances. We've got, we play with 2 wingers, but when do they create anything? Yeah, Jed Wallace flatters to deceive, unfortunately. He was one of the best players in the league up until last Christmas, or the Christmas before the one we've just had. And since then, I think there's something not quite right with him. I don't know if it's teams are marking him out the game and things, and people have sussed him out a bit, but he isn't as dominant as he was, and therefore we're not creating. We have to find a way to create chances. We create chances, we score goals, we win games. It's fairly simple.
I think, you know, you mentioned Jed Wallace there. I think his charts in the first half probably sums up his recent form. You know, he's through on goal. I think he does everything right until the finish. And I think sometimes, Merv, what do you think? I mean, it's obviously he's going through a bit of a barren spell at the moment, but he's still obviously a player that we look to kind of grab the game by the scruff of the neck sometimes.
I think that's possibly part of the problem. I think over the years at Mill, we've had some of these key players who we've looked to all the time when things aren't going well. And possibly the rest of the team do the same thing. You know, there's always one player that if things aren't going well, they'll look to him. Maybe he's feeling the pressure a bit of it, you know, feeling that there's too much onus on him to make things happen and to change games. And he's that sort of player. We need more like that to take the pressure off of him. And I know people on Twitter I've seen are crying out for us to sign a creative midfielder in the window. I think that's probably I think they're going to be disappointed. But But yeah, I think perhaps it's just for too long now. Perhaps he feels that weight of expectancy, not just from the fans, but from the rest of the team as well, to make stuff happen. And we need. I mean, I was actually quite impressed what glimpse we saw of him in the cup game at Boreham Wood of Tyler Bury. I think midway through the second half, he got the ball with his back to goal. He went on a really good quick run to the edge of the area and brought off a free kick. And we don't see that enough. People just getting the ball and just running at defences and scaring them, because there's nothing that defence hates more than someone with pace. You always see it. And we used to have that in the days of like Paul Eiffel, and he sort of divided opinion. A lot of people. It's like wingers do tend to sort of divide opinion, don't they? People will criticise him, but he was exciting. He'd get the ball and he made things happen. And you could see defences were scared. And I don't think we've seen enough of that in the last few seasons, really. And I don't know what people talk about systems, the system that Rowett plays and who can fit into it and who can't. And then we had the big Matt Smith debate. But it's like Neil says. I mean, football's a very simple game, and I think it's easy to overcomplicate it. And I think we do need to perhaps maybe go back to basics. We need players who are going to get the ball and run at defences, I think, a bit more.
No, 100%. I agree. I think firstly, evening to Katie for the Katie Carroll for the comment. They've jumped my words. But if you're just joining now, guys, be sure to interact. Obviously, get your thoughts in. Obviously, what you think about what we're saying here. I think I agree with you in what you're saying there, Merv, in the sense that the rawness of players sometimes catches people out. I think with Jed Wallace, he is feeling the pressure, and I think we signed him to be a winger, and now he's kind of like looking to do X, Y, and Z when you just know Jed Wallace can do X and Y. Keep him to that. And instead, he's getting to do various tasks. I think he's just feeling the pressure at times. And I think that's probably something that, in a struggling side in particular, you're looking for players to kind of grab the game by scruff the net. But I think a lot of the time players shy away from it. I think Conor Mahoney coming back, Neil, could be an interesting one. I mean, I've not really seen his return date just been scheduled in just yet. But I think he could be a player that could hopefully offer some more, instead of relying on Jed too much.
I 100% agree with Merv. I think we need somebody to pick the ball up and we need somebody to run at them. Scott Malone did it a couple of times, didn't he? I think against Boreham Wood, was it? And then and maybe against Bournemouth. I think he picked the ball up a couple of times and drove into the penalty area. Funnily enough, when I went on one of the Bournemouth podcasts before the game, I was actually looking up Conor Mahoney's goals. And there weren't rocket science. He was picking the ball up, driving at the defence and scoring from the edge of the box. Yeah? So, but if you do that, you get the chance to either shoot or play somebody in. And that's what we're missing. Either drive at the defence, get the ball to the byline, pull it back and see what happens. Yeah, that's gamble on it. Let's go back to when Rowett first came here. We played with a carefree attitude, didn't we? Where we weren't bothered. Nothing fazed us. We attacked teams and we did all of this and it was a joy to watch. But it seems as if he's been here a year and he's settled back into, we haven't got those kind of players anymore. I think that Conor Mahoney does come back soon and shows us what he can do.
Interesting comment here from Alan. Sorry, just about in there before we crack on. I think it's a good talking point. I think we're missing a character who represents what Millwall are about, like Terry Hurlock, Muscat, etc. Players don't seem to know what it means to play for the shirt now. I mean, I think if I think to our squad at the moment, a player that sticks out to me is Ben Thompson, who still isn't getting a look in, which I can understand because obviously Leonard and Woods is a preferred partnership, but it must be that at this point, he just doesn't see Thompson as an option going forward at the moment, Rowett. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Merv, but like it seems to be that he's just obviously written him off, I think.
Yeah, it is frustrating because Thompson is that all-action player, and he's that player that excites and will sort of put that extra effort in that Alan's comment mentions there. And unfortunately, I think if Hurlock and Muscat were playing now, they'd spend most of the season suspended, unfortunately, because the game's gone a bit soft now. They wouldn't get away with anything. They wouldn't be on the pitch 5 minutes, which is a shame because we do like to see that sort of player. But I mean, Millwall teams have always had a really good blend of that hard-working player who will put the foot in and get the tackles in and win the balls, and the flair players. You've had your Cripses and your Dumfries and your Kuzaks and your Otlakowskis over the years. And that's always been when things have worked out best for us. I think we've got that blend. But every successful Millwall team I've seen has had those similar sort of traits, and that is they've had pacey, exciting wingers. So again, people like Steve Lowndes, Otto Lukowski, Carter, O'Callaghan, George Lawrence, and you've had your no-nonsense sort of strikers. You know, your Fashionu's, your Lovells, and your Bremners, and obviously Cascarino, Sheringham. And you know, I know these are. I'm harking back to the '80s now, and football's changed a lot more. But I do think there is a case of overcomplicating things and overplaying sometimes. I mean, we saw it back in the Holloway days. We started the season with a couple of wins. We think we beat Leeds, and then we won at Fulham. And we were playing apparently this amazing sort of football. And we went to Sheffield Wednesday away, and we watched, and it was actually ridiculous how they were just passing the ball from side to side and nothing was happening. The Sheffield Wednesday players just sat back and watched us, and that became a sort of a hallmark of Holloway's football that season, where nothing happened, and it's easy to play against, and it goes against the way Millwall teams have played, and I think the game should be played, and that is, you know, a lot more high tempo. Really, it sounds a bit old fashioned, but it works. As Neil said, it's simple. It works.
I think a lot of your point there falls on the fact there's no fans, and I agree with you. You've really said that.
Yeah,
And I think that's probably a massive factor there, because with the players that are, you know, not necessarily not putting the effort in, but you know, I think if we had fans there, you'd see a few more players kind of rise to the occasion a bit more. And I think we're maybe missing that in elements. I mean, an interesting comment here where Mickey's trying to get some conversation going, but I think, you know, David Taylor's saying Thompson had a row with Gary, wanted to leave. I mean, I'm not sure how accurate that is, but there is sort of suggestions there that it might be a little thrift there, which, I mean, I hope is not the case, because it's clear like Thompson on social media the last few days bigging up Matt Namara and obviously his appearances in the first team. So we'll have to wait and see. I think, Mickey, did you want to say something before I move on to Nottingham Forest? I think I butt you off there a little bit.
Oh, no, just saying that we've talking about Rowett being, you know, sort of all and it sounds as if Neil could be joining along the lines of Dan at TV Lines, saying that he wants the boss gone. I just don't see, if we get rid of him, I don't see where he's going to go. So what side of the fence are you still 80%, Neil, that you want him in, or?
Michael, do behave yourself, will you, for once in your life?
Michael?
Michael, yeah.
You might know, are you?
I'm 90%. Yeah, well, I do want Rowett here, yeah? But I do think something needs to change, yeah? So, so stop trying to lump me in with people that want him out, yeah?
Ask the question.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, well, I want him in, yeah? I want him in. I stick people up for a living, you don't, yeah? So don't try and stitch me up.
I think, I mean, Linus here with a comment saying, I often fell into this category with Neil Harris when he was in charge, right? And then obviously we got Gary Rowett in afterwards. But Linus here with a comment saying, Rowett in, who else do we have as an option? I think ultimately, until you take the plunge, you don't know who's there as an option sometimes in football management. Because I thought with Harris, like once he goes, I'm thinking, cool, we're in trouble here. But then Gary Rowett came in at the time and probably took us on the next level. I think sometimes it's a roll of the dice, and it either works out well or it can easily plummet. But I am in the Rowett in camp by a clear country mile at the moment. So is Adam Scanlon here. He's saying he knows what he needs and wants, but the current market isn't great at the moment. So hard to find and get that player. I think absolutely. That's probably something that's quite an obvious problem at the moment, you know, with COVID. But it's an issue, because even he said it today in an interview, right? Or it might have been during the week, but you know, he's saying we're waiting for the big players to make their moves, and then we'll make our moves afterwards. So it's like the same with Sahor, where it's rumored that he's probably going to get recalled by Allardyce and not get extended, purely because Allardyce hasn't got his striker in yet that he wants. So, you know, Allardyce said in the media that I think he said something along the lines of, we might have to give him a game till we get another option in. So it's like, you know, a lot of it is dictated by the big hitters that can pay the wages and kind of move money about. And then once people are dead wood, so to speak, that's when they become available for the likes of Millwall.
Yeah, I think that Allardyce probably wants to look at everything that he's got available. I think he's lost 2 strikers. Charlie Austin's gone to QPR, and haven't they got a young lad who's injured or something? So
the guy, the Charlton guy, I can't remember his name.
Yeah. Oh, blimey. Rowett out, Pulis in. Oh, please. No.
I think he's going through...
Alan, never, ever, ever in a month bunch, whatever you want to call it, of Sundays, do we want Tony Pulis at our football club. because we'll all have to start singing "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" at games, won't we?
I think there's a lot more to it with Tony Pulis. I think there's a whole his mannerisms as well. Like he does all his press conferences standing up, even during the week and stuff like that. Just little odd things that you look at and think, because he wants to stand up and be so serious the whole time. But you just look at him and think, like, I suppose when you're winning games, you know, people laugh and kind of embrace it. It's a bit like the Holloway charm. But I think, especially in his recent jobs, especially at Sheffield Wednesday, I think that's definitely someone I wouldn't take in. Someone that I've always liked as a character and always thought of, and Paul Monkhouse has just done the comment, I would bring it up now, boys, Neil Warnock. I think he'd be perfect for Millwall, and I've always thought this. I've always thought this with Neil Warnock, because, you know, he always comes down to London, loves the occasion, always talks about it in the media. He's getting off the coach and he's embracing it, but he's laughing about it at the same time. I think he gets the club. And he's just got a sort of kind of similar working class background, I feel like, from when he started in his early days, that kind of rub off on our fans. I mean, go on, I'll throw Neil Warnock into the hat. What do people think about that? If it was, I mean, it's not going to happen. But
I think you're right. I think he, you know, would you want him here? Probably not, because he is a Marmite sort of character. But could he do a job for us? Fucking right, he could. He could definitely do a job, and then get us firing on all cylinders. But would the fans take to him? I don't know. That would be the one. Would the fans take to him? I don't think they would, but it would be a cracking one to have, possibly.
Yeah, I saw the Cowley brothers. Somebody mentioned the Cowley brothers.
Yeah,
did very, very well at Lincoln, but did absolutely nothing at Huddersfield.
They kept them up, didn't they? And I think Huddersfield were going through a bit of a tricky spell at the time. But then you look at Huddersfield now, and they seem to be kicking on a bit more than what they were under the Cowley brothers. I think it's one of those weird jobs up there where you never quite know, like, you know, what kind of Huddersfield you're walking in.
Yeah, didn't they get Bielsa's number 2 in or something?
Up
that way. And I think they got him in. So there's obviously a Bielsa influence in there somewhere. But that's also another thing. Could we go down the foreign market? I know that we were looking at a foreign manager before Lomas, weren't we? The former Liverpool defender, forget what he's called now. And we didn't go down that. Or do we stick to English? I don't know. Probably it's all
managers, you mean?
I don't think anybody wants. Yeah, well, I don't think anybody really wants Rowett out, do they?
No, I don't believe so. But it's interesting what people go for. I think Riley or Chris Wilder is a bit ambitious, because I don't think he's ever going to, unless he got sacked by Sheffield United, then I could see that as a potential option if it was a case.
Professional Northerner, Ian.
Well, yeah. Paul Cook, ex-Pompey and Wigan, I think he's muted to take over at Sheffield Wednesday if you read the papers. So, I mean, might miss that boat. But yeah, no, it's interesting dynamic what people would go for in the hypothetical scenario. So I think if we got a foreign manager, we'd have to change how the club functions, you know, the director of football sort of angle, so to speak. I think David Elson with the best comment here.
He's coming back to Chelsea, isn't he?
I suppose
yeah, but he's supposed to be going back to help out Fat Frank in some way, shape, or form.
I don't know how that dynamic works, but I mean,
let's get the Millwall Air Force out again for him, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Hoff's greatest moment.
So let's move on to Saturday's game, because why not? We're playing Nottingham Forest at the County Ground. The last time I saw Millwall players at the County Ground, which I'm sure Mickey is expecting me to say there. So obviously it's been, I don't know, how many days has it been now, Mickey? 310, 20 days maybe? I normally count them. I normally do one that counts them. But
do you need me to Google it for you?
But obviously we're playing Nottingham Forest. I think they've picked up form since we last played them in the league. I think the last 5 games they're unbeaten in the league. I think they've only conceded 2 goals, I read somewhere. Obviously they won the FA Cup last weekend, getting one over Neil Harris. So obviously in the comments, if you're here watching, make sure to put your predictions in for Saturday's game, and also your team lineups and what you think could be something we go for. I think we were going to discuss team lineups. I'll come to you first, Neil. I think, you know, I've not really asked Merv to get a team ready for us, or if you make any changes. But Neil, if you was going right Saturday, what would be your 11 going into the game?
My 11 going into the game would be, obviously Bart in goal. Tempted to put Fielding in, especially after he kept the clean sheet against Boreham Wood last week. But I don't want you to spit that all over the place. Danny McNamara hasn't really put a foot wrong in the last 2 games, has he? Same with Scott Malone at left back. I think he's been bloody good. He was very good against Boreham Wood. Obviously, it was against a non-league club, but I thought he had a good first half against Bournemouth. I'm going to go 3 at the back, as everybody seems to like this 3 at the back. So obviously Cooper, Hutchinson, Pearce. Central midfield will be Woods and Leonard. Then we're going to change the formation slightly. We're going to go with Jed Wallace. And then I'm going to go for Parrott and Sahor.
Interesting. I think my team lineup is very similar to yours, Neil. I think I've gone with the back five, kept the same back five, and goalkeeper Woods and Leonard the same in the middle, because I think it was working great the other night. I think we didn't really mention Leonard, but his form recently, I thought Tuesday night he was superb. Just picking up the ball, turning the defenders and running at them and cause havoc. And I think that's so. If he keeps doing, I'm all for it. And then I've gone with Wallace and Bennett on the left instead of Parrott. I just think Bennett might be knocking on the door, and he played well against Nottingham Forest last season at the county grounds, or the city grounds, sorry. And I think he could be, especially someone that's had a few games off, hopefully comes in and causes some trouble. And then up front, I was stuck between Smith and Sahor. I think I'll go Sahor just because if he's fit against play, I definitely would go with Sahor, and I think he's offered what he can, and it's his last game for us. But Smith definitely would be knocking on the door, won't he, Merv? I think it's saying I'm going to get my chance.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I made this comment when he scored on Tuesday that he's got the best record probably out of all the strikers we've got in the Championship. I mean, his stats, I've not got them in front of me, but his stats at QPR were unbelievable for goals and assists based on how many games he played. But I think the fact that they used him sparingly there, like we are doing, probably tells a story that perhaps there's an issue with his fitness, and maybe, understandably, he probably can't play Tuesday, Saturday 90 minutes. But yeah, I'd agree with you on the Bennett front. I think he offers us a lot, and maybe Parrott needs a rest, if anything else. Maybe his confidence is going to take a knock. Some people will say, well, no, keep playing him. The goal will come, and his confidence will transform. But at the same time, I think, his head might be getting down as well, so maybe just change it a bit. But I do like Sahor, I must admit. And again, it's down to people who've got experience at this level, and he's done it time and time again at this level, as has Smith. I mean, I mentioned playing Sahor with Smith, and I got my head bitten off the other night, but I think why not? We've tried every other permutation of strikers, haven't we? I mean, we've got probably more experienced strikers on our books now than I think we've ever had. I mean, you look at the experience at this level that Bodvarsson's got, and Smith, and Bradshaw, and obviously we've got Parrott in on loan, who's raw, but Sahor, it's that many options up front. I think the only one we haven't tried now is Smith with Sahor. They're both just good players at this level, and why not? I mean, give it a go. But yeah, I say Forest are in good form, so we've got to be careful. I think it's 6 unbeaten now. I think they've won 3 and drawn 3 of the last 6. So just sod's law that they've hit form just when they play us, which always seems to happen.
I think Chris Hughton's got on playing, a bit more difficult to beat. I think Grabban even got one the other week, which it sets the omen as well for that one. Lewis Grabban, I think he's always up for the games, normally away from home.
Definitely
I think so. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. I mean, I think Adam Scannell's done his team here where he said Bart, McNamara, Hutch, Cooper, Malone. So he's gone for a back 4. Thompson, Woods and Leonard, Sahor, Parrott and Jed. I think, I personally am on the Parrott side of, like how you said there, Merv, like, maybe just leaves a game out, just maybe come back in and hopefully could, have that game out or maybe make an impact later in the game as a sub.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Neil?
I think I think Adam's side's actually a pretty good team, actually.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to play 4-3-3, I think Katie also had Woods in or Tomo in instead of Woods.
Yeah, Katie,
yeah. Fair enough. You couldn't disagree with that, as I think we have looked a little bit better without Woods than we have with Woods at times.
Let's not talk about Ryan Woods again. Let's just move on to Ryan Woods.
Explode. Mickey will explode. I'll explode, and you and Merv will have to do the show on your own. Yeah, but the City Ground's actually somewhere where we traditionally do quite well.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the stats the other day. I don't know if you all remember the 4-1 victory, I think, in 2012.
That game was the one that sparked the Holloway comeback season. So you remember the whole story where Alan Dunn's in the changing room and he's galvanising the boys. And then from that point onwards, Holloway went with Dunn and Beavers centre-half. And that was the pairing towards the end of the rest of that season. I think we went 8 games unbeaten. We stayed up. The Great Escape happened. Or was it that game or was it the one after? I think it was definitely around that time where we went to City Ground and done it.
Trotter, Darius Henderson, if we remember him.
Right, okay, season after I'm thinking of then. So
Chris Wood, player that we should have signed and we should have taken a gamble on.
Yeah.
And I think Andy Keogh scored in that game. I do remember that game. And it is always a place where we go, when we do go to and we actually play well. I think, last season we went there and won 3-0, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I think we've only lost there 2 or 3 times in quite a long time. I know there was quite a long spell where we haven't played them, but we went through. But I think if you look at the records, it is a place where we actually go to and we do play quite well up there.
The game I was thinking of was a 2-1 win away at the county ground, I keep saying, the city ground, and it was Scott Malone and Lee Martin scoring with Meyerhofer up front in a 4-2-3-1. Our team that day, I'll give it to you, David Ford in goal, Carlos Edwards right back, Alan Dunn and Mark Beavers centre halves, left back Scott Malone, midfield 3 of Nicky Bailey, Owen Garvan, remember him? Ed Upson, Lee Martin and Martin Wolford with Meyerhofer leading the line. And that team stayed throughout that whole season and got us staying up that year. And I remember going to this game, I think we was doomed. We was like literally against all odds. We was dead and buried. And then from that point onwards, we went on to I think it was 8 games, managed to stay up last day of the season against Bournemouth. I think Robbo got on the pitch and he talks about it when he got carried off the pitch afterwards. And it's like his kind of last kind of hurrah at Millwall. So, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of a blast from the past, that one. But you're right, the City ground is a good stomping ground for us. Mickey, you wanted to say something there when you was laughing away. I don't know if you was going to pipe in and say something there.
Oh no, I was just thinking about the big fella. He was, he was a dodgy boy, wasn't he? Fucking hell. He was definitely a dodgy boy.
Is beyond me.
No, I don't. I've got no idea what I'm saying. No.
I think a lot of people are calling for Tom over Woods, which I think I can see the logic behind it. But I think, I suppose the team's played quite well recently, so it's like, do you want to see too many changes? But at the same time, I think a lot of people obviously want Thompson to come into the side and make his impression. The same with Steve Monk here with Smith. We'll be buzzing for tomorrow after his last performance at the City ground. I think that's why I wasn't sure who to go for, Smith or Sahor. I think the problem is with Smith up front, especially if it's the 3 up front, you often find that, Smith's a bit isolated up front if the opposition keeps the ball, which is the kind of main criticism we've got, really. I think, if we're going to have them hold the ball and put the chance on the plate for him, then, yeah, of course, play him. But if he's chasing the game, 20 minutes of running around, he's normally blowing out of his backside a little bit. So that's probably the only criticism I think a lot of people have there.
I don't think you can start him. I don't think he can play 50 minutes. Yeah. I think he's best served coming in off the bench when everybody's a bit knackered, and like the other day, he can just pop up in the middle of the 6. See what we were saying about get the ball in the box and we're going to score a goal. Yeah, there was a nod down Tuesday night. Nod down. He got on the end of it. Bish bang bosh. 1-1. Job's a good one.
I think he's as I said in my post-match video, I think Matt Smith scores goals, and I think you mentioned it, Merv, of his goal record. I think it was Jake Saunders put a tweet out for every 170 minutes he plays, he scores a goal for Millwall, which obviously he's not completed 90 minutes in many of those games, but every 170 minutes, which is obviously less than 2 games, he scores a goal, which begs the question: he should maybe play more often, Merv.
Yeah, I think the full season before we signed him, before Neil Harris signed him, again there was a lot of split opinion amongst Millwall fans about whether we should get him or not, and it turned out that percentage-wise he had the best record both for goal scoring and assists. But obviously he'd only played like 20 odd games out of a 46 game season. But those sort of percentages, they're great to have around in a team, especially the way Neil Harris played. And like Neil mentioned, it's about getting the ball forward and stuff like that. I think it's a fine line between playing that sort of more direct style and then going too direct or too far down that alleyway as we did with Harris. But I'm concerned that perhaps we're going a bit too much the other way, maybe, and that's perhaps what needs to change a little bit. And I think Smith allows us to do that.
I think that's what's changed. I feel like the last few games, because If I think back to obviously the New Year stage where we had the games off and then we came back Coventry, I think especially with the Bristol City game where we kind of went more direct and up front, I think a lot of the time we was asking the likes of Cooper to get the ball, play it, and often they were kind of left kind of guys sideways or backwards, and obviously it's a different way of playing for them where obviously under Harris it was lump it to the big man and play from there. It was often get to Morrison and then Gregory and Wallace will try and make an impact, and I think that kind of carried on a little bit, and then Rowett came in. It was refreshing to see, we're playing from the back, but sometimes you can overplay it, and I think that's what with the whole the team going out of form, I think at times that was maybe an underlying problem there. I don't know what you think, Merv.
Yeah, again, I don't know, I'm not one of these fans that goes along with this overanalyzing systems and formations, because to be honest, it goes over my head a lot of it. I don't really understand a lot of it. As Neil says, it's just I like football to be simple, and I think even though the game has changed a lot since the 80s, it is still very simple. You look at teams that have had success in the last few years in the Championship, people like Sheffield United, Cardiff, teams that aren't pretty, but they do blend it well. They know when to go direct, when to hit you, but also they can play football. And that was the hallmark of John Docherty's side that got promoted and did so well in the first division. In the first season, the first division, they had that blend. Because if you look back now at some of the footage, people always think of us as being another Wimbledon at the time, but we definitely weren't. In fact, even Wimbledon had some good ball players, some skillful footballers, and that's what it's all about. It's about the blend, and I think you can go too far and overthink it. And I wonder sometimes if it's even too much for the players that own the fans. If a manager gets over technical with his system, and sometimes perhaps even the players, it's too much for them. They just they have a set way of playing, and that's what they want to do. And I think Jed Wallace is probably like that. I think he wants to get the ball and run, but perhaps he's being told, not to, which there's not a lot you can do about that, really.
An interesting one from Alan here. Obviously, Romeo went out of favour now. It's quick how he's kind of just gone to the side of our thoughts when we're talking about the 11. I think that's just due to McNamara doing so well, Neil, wasn't it? I think, he's grabbed his opportunity by the scruff of the neck, really.
Yeah, McNamara's come in and hasn't done a thing wrong, has he? He was almost man of the match, arguably, on Tuesday night. It depends if you want to give it to him or Leonard. I'd probably erred on the side of giving it to Leonard. He played very, very well last week in the FA Cup. And he is the person who's actually in possession of the shirt. His final ball is a lot better than Romeo's. Yeah, Romeo seems to get stuck up pitch and doesn't get back and leave gaping holes. To be fair, he hasn't really done much wrong, Romeo, but he hasn't done much right either. He's just been one of those players that just coasted along, I think.
I think with him, I think what I've noticed with McNamara especially, I don't know if it's a deliberate thing from Rowett or if it's just because McNamara is doing it, but we seem to be getting him further up the pitch a bit more. And I know Romeo obviously gets there a lot, but I think you see with Romeo, he's kind of sprinting onto the ball, whereas McNamara is already there. I don't know if that was something I felt watching on Tuesday, but, I think McNamara just seems to have come in with a lot of confidence and thinks, I'm going to play my game here. And you notice that obviously with the Bournemouth Rook game, Malone and McNamara are both our furthest four players at times. And I think that offers the outlet that we get with the three centre-halves and obviously two wing-backs bobbing on. I wanted to just talk about Mill Drive Home's comment. I'm sure Mickey saw it. Mickey is simple. Any thoughts, Mickey?
I've got fucking no idea, you bald-headed cunt, what you're saying.
Mickey, calm down.
Nice that we've got you watching, by the way, Tone. Thank you very much. And remember, his show's after every match on YouTube. Join in and watch him. But, it's just because he's bitter because he's not on this week.
We got a real guest. Weeks, Mick.
Mate, his thing. Omar, can we go on to another one of Merv's books?
Of course, yes. Go on, steer it away. So
then you've done a Natural High as well. What was the thinking behind Natural High?
It was like a progression from my first book, really, which sort of focused on that season we got promoted. And again, because there was a lack of sort of reference material, if you like, and there's a whole generation of Mill supporters who haven't been to the old den, never saw us in the top flight, and never actually saw the likes of Sheringham, Cascarino and that in the flesh. But it wasn't just that. Wasn't just the football at that time. It was a whole sort of atmosphere around the whole country. There was something going on in '88 that was the whole acid house thing was going on, and there was just it was just a strange sort of time. Everything sort of clicked into place just in 1988, and I wanted to sort of get that across to people who experienced it, but also people who perhaps hadn't, and hopefully I did that. My only regret was not perhaps getting hold of more of the team to talk to about it. I got to talk to quite a few of them, but I would like to have spoken to some of the others, like Cass and Teddy. But who knows? Maybe in the future that they might be willing to chat and give us some stories. But yeah, I mean, what it was basically was an account of a memorable time. Even the season we went down, the second season, it was still a good laugh. Basically, that was the thing, and it was just a really special time.
And then you end up writing the Ordinary Boys about the '79 Cup team, which again, some right characters, some good players in that team.
Yeah.
And then you decide to write that for possibly the same reasons. Is it not enough reference books and everything else?
I thought it was a story that needed to be told. But once I started digging, I wasn't sure if there was going to be enough in there to actually write a book about it. But once I got digging into some of the things that went on at the club, and like the Peter Anderson era, which that will get people pulling their face. But there's a whole show in that, I think, Peter Anderson. But yeah, what went on at the club was unbelievable, And what fascinated me was how the club at the time in the late '70s was going through a terrible time. There was the Panorama programme which totally stitched the club up. We had hooligan problems. The club was skint, and yet here we had, beneath all that, we had this amazing crop of youngsters coming through, and this superb coach, Oscar Arthur, this Argentinian coach, who we had no right to have really. He was sort of a Pep Guardiola of his time. And we produced this incredible youth team which won the FA Youth Cup, and were it not for the state of the first team needing to call on those youth players to play in that first team to try and keep them in the second division and then kick the Reds of ball in the third, they would have won it a second time. And all the second division teams, or all the non-first division teams that did well in the FA Youth Cup, always went on to greater things, because those youth players always progressed, and which is the idea, is benefited the first team. Yet we were the only team not to do that. Ours it just unfortunately just petered out through a mixture of things. But it was such a much bigger story than just the team that won the FA Youth Cup, and so many characters. I mean, Bob Pearson, who I've been talking about on Twitter with people tonight, was every single bloke I spoke to. Remember that team I spoke to, the very first name that came out was Bob Pearson, and his influence in getting these players in. People like Kevin O'Callaghan, who was wanted by West Ham, who, the team he supported, his local team, who were doing really well at the time. Once he spoke to Bob Pearson, there was never any doubt in his mind who he wanted to sign for, and that was such a great and at the same time sad time for the club, because we had this fantastic team potentially, and it was just wasted really.
I think what is actually the work that Bob Pearson did over a number of years for Millwall, and it wasn't just 5 or 10 years, we're talking 20, 25 years. And the players that Bob Pearson discovered, it's almost a book in itself, isn't it? Bob Pearson deserves to be mentioned amongst the great Millwall legends, I think, because of the players that he brought through, the players that he discovered.
But that's the thing. It wasn't just about the player. It was the way he sold the club to them. He was such a Mill man. He was so passionate about the club. It wasn't like, oh, he's decent, I'll recommend him to the manager, or I'll get him down for a trial. He went round to these kids' houses and sat there for hours talking to the parents. And all they wanted to do was send them sign for Mill. And you talk about recruitment these days and that sort of thing, but that is recruitment in my book.
Absolutely. That was hard as well. I mean, because then, Crystal Palace were on fire, and a lot of the other teams were really good youth teams. So he was definitely batting well above his average for getting some of those players.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So on to your final book, which is After the Lord's Mayor Show. And we mentioned Jim earlier. It's sort of your attempt of just covering the years between, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was something I considered. I thought, do I need to continue the story after the 2 first division years? And when you look at what Millwall went through in the 90s, it's probably more than a lot of football clubs have gone through in their entire histories. You know, you just look at, obviously there was a playoff defeat, you know, missing out on getting to Wembley, obviously leaving the Den, going to administration. So much happened in just that relatively short period of time that, again, I thought it was a good story to be told, and there were some good characters to chat to about things. Ian Dawes, who kindly provided the forward, was great to chat to, and he had some really good stories about Bruce Rioch, which was quite an eye opener. But yeah, again, it's just I enjoy the research. I enjoy telling the story, and it's nice to think of people who perhaps weren't there at the time, and perhaps obviously you can look it up on the internet now, and you can go to YouTube. But I thought perhaps it was nice to just sort of dig out a few stories about things that happened that perhaps even the people that were there at the time weren't aware of, and it's just I just find it very enjoyable, really.
Your books have gone down really well with, you know, a huge section of the fan base. Most of our fans love reading your books. I mean, your first one, Because My Dad Does, absolutely resonated with most football fans across the world. And it really touched a note. And I'm glad that you wrote that first, because that probably gave you the drive to do the rest of the books afterwards.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, I was going to do that. I thought, well, I'll do it. I kept telling myself to write it, and I kept putting it off. And I thought, right, I'll do it, get it out of the way, and I can crack on then and stop going on about it, and people will stop going on to me about it. And I enjoyed it so much, and I thought, well, a few friends and family will buy it, and that's it, you know, and that will be forgotten. But it was received really well, and I thought, well, you know, I just got a bit addicted to it, I suppose, really, and I really enjoy it. And as soon as we went into lockdown last year, because I work for myself employed, and my work went a bit quiet for a while, so I thought rather than sort of sit around and sort of feel sorry for myself, I just cracked on and wrote another book, and it was really therapeutic to get the old programmes out and go through some old stories and look some stuff up, and it sort of flowed from there, really. So I'm sort of looking forward to doing the next one now as well. Really. So
just before we go back to Omar and obviously talk a bit more about tomorrow's game, you obviously now publish, part of your company now, what you do self-employed is that you can publish books and stuff. So I mean, if there is any older Millwall fans what feel that they've had a journey following Millwall and ever wanted to put something on writing of the games they've seen and stuff like that, not about the stuff that we don't need to put in books, but if there's anything there, then maybe contact Merv on Twitter, or is on Facebook as well. And also look at, you know, if you want a copy of his book, if you've not read any of them, they are all on Amazon. You just need to type in Merv Payne, and they'll all come up. Is that right? Have I missed anything?
Great. No, it's perfect. Brilliant. Yeah.
Got some nice feedback here. Tony's comment gave me a little chuckle, but yeah, there's a couple of people all kind of echoing obviously what we've said there and what Mickey said. So yeah, I mean, I suppose we've got the last 5 or 10 minutes here to wrap up. I mean, Neil, I'm going to come straight to you on this one, mate. What's your thoughts ahead of tomorrow, and what your gut feeling, so to speak?
Well, after thinking we're either going to draw or lose 5-0 on Tuesday night, I don't quite know what to make of it, to be honest. I've got quite a good feeling about this. If we can play as well as we did on Tuesday night and last Saturday, if we can carry that on, there's no reason why we can't go up there and we can't do something. We do play better against the better teams in the division, and they're playing well at the minute, and it's got all the hallmarks of a Millwall hit and run job, isn't it? As long as we can remember how to score goals, and there's nothing more I'd love to see more than Zahor go back to West Brom injured after scoring a goal for us tomorrow night.
So if we can get your score predictions in the comments below if you're watching. I think Mickey just put a little post out there. But yeah, any score predictions tomorrow? I think I'm the same as you, Neil. I am confident quietly, but then sometimes when we're quietly confident being a Millwall fan, it's normally
exactly. About 3:05.
I was dreading Tuesday night against Bournemouth, and I watched the first 10 minutes and I saw, you know, Brooks skip past a couple of players thinking this is not going to be good. But then, you know, by the half-time whistle, he was unlucky to be 1-0 down and came back out second half and got a really good draw in the end. I think if we play the same way, you're right. You know, if we give him a good game, if we match him and try and, you know, play on the front foot, I think there's no reason why we can't, you know, try and nick it tomorrow. So with that, I'm going to say we're going to win 1-0, and I'm going to say Matt Smith scores again. So that's my prediction. Mickey, Give me yours.
Go for 1-0 and Zahor.
I'm going to go 1-0 Smith.
I'm going to go. I think we're going to win more than that. I think we're going to do it. I reckon we'll go. Yeah, I reckon we'll go 2-0. Maybe 2-1. No, no, they'll probably score because of what's his name's there. Yeah, go 2-1. 2-1 Millwall. Cooper to score.
Yeah, I'm going to go 1-0 as well. But I was going to go Smith, but I'll be different. I'll go Bennett. I think Bennett's due a goal. And I like him, and I think he likes playing at Forest, as he said before. Because the old Derby influence. I think he's been up his game for that one. So yeah, I've just got
a feeling it's kind of set up for Bennett to come back in tomorrow and just make a difference. That's what I feel like. I mean, keep your predictions coming, guys. I think a lot of people are confident, and I think which is only a good thing for us, like I said. So I like Adam's comment of Lyle Taylor own
goal. Yeah, but I'd actually settle for a grab and own goal, wouldn't you?
Oh, that'll do. 2 own goals. But no, I think it's set up to be a good game. I think I just want to quickly touch on some transfer news before we go and finish up today. I think I was hearing what Rowett was saying during the week. I think we're finally going to see the end of Jiri Skalak, guys. I mean,
yes.
I don't know how guaranteed that is to happen because you need someone to come in. I imagine we'll end up just paying him off, to be honest, at this point. But yeah, I mean, the transfer that never really worked out, Neil, Jiri Skalak.
No, mate. Yeah, well, I don't know what was going through Aldo's mind to sign him, actually. He was a player who had, one good season at Brighton, and then he did nothing for a season and a half, and we came in and paid £750,000 for him. They must have thought it was fucking Christmas. Literally, somebody coming in and wanting to pay money for him. I think we're probably going to have to pay him off. I can't see anybody wanting him. He isn't going to want to go anywhere. I know that I saw a couple of comments. He's only on $8,000 a week. Only on $8,000 a week. I think he's on a little bit more than that.
I think that's the rumoured one.
Yeah, I don't think he'd have come here for $8,000 a week. Yeah, but then hopefully him and his Ferrari can fuck off out the car park.
Has he actually got a Ferrari? I know you keep saying this, and you keep saying he's collected his money, but has he actually got a Ferrari? Can you confirm that?
I believe he has, hasn't he? Yeah, he posted it on Instagram or something. A Ferrari or something.
I'm not quite sure, to you, but I think it's the sign that never really worked out. I think, I don't know if it fell on Aldo, like you said. I don't know if it was Alex Aldridge's little flag player, or if maybe it was a Neil Harris sort of thing of thinking, you know what, 4-4-2, I've signed Matt Smith. Let me get someone across the ball, and hopefully we'll score.
Neil Harris doesn't make the recommendations. Neil Harris didn't send people out to scout players.
That's true. But he had to give it the green light, I imagine.
Recruitment. Who gives Neil Harris a sheet of players,
which Harris traded from at that time?
Yeah, but they were probably working through the 5 first choices that we couldn't get because we were asking silly, or we're offering silly money for them, and we eventually get down to our bottom choice, which must have been Skalak. I cannot believe he was anywhere near the top choice of ours.
I think that's it, though. It's like you never know with the transfer. Maybe one day we can get someone on that is involved with recruitment and kind of gives us an insight. But from what I understand it is a bit of a minefield. You've got players, you've got people scouting the players, people watching the players, people flagging them up based on how many appearances they've made and how many minutes they've played and how many times they've ran forward into the box and stuff like that. And then it goes up to a director, then it goes to a manager. But a lot of it changes nowadays. I think Mill will do it more in an old style, so to speak. I think the manager does get quite a lot of a say. When you compare it to the likes of, I don't know, Chelsea, for example, I think a lot of it's done by the board. But, Yeah, well, we've got the former fan on the board here. Mickey, come on. Yeah, but
Steve does most of it. At the beginning of the season, there's a meeting at the beginning of the season for obviously the first transfer, and then obviously the second one. And they agree a target list through the stats through when Aldo was there. Aldo and his team used to create players who would fit well within the team. They'd collate a list and they'd go through the list and go, yes, no, whatever. And then that list would be their Bible, what they work and go after by hook or by crook. But don't forget, the trouble is, unless it's changing now with obviously the new one what's come in, that he's got a bit more experience with Europe and overseas. We've never scouted overseas.
That's right.
We don't really scout anywhere outside the UK.
Or maybe
no, we never did. Under Neil Harris. No, we never did. Under Neil, we never had. He didn't want overseas, so we never looked at the German leagues, the French leagues, the Turkish leagues, all the other leagues where there was loads. I mean, I met a couple of guys who come over and scouted here for a lot of our middle 20 players to go over and play in Spain B leagues and stuff, where they could get really good money for playing, where they're coming, late 20s, coming up towards the end of their career on the championship levels, and try and take people over. But no, I think it's always mad that a team like Millwall, really, we could probably really benefit from looking in, the French leagues, the German leagues and stuff. But we've never done it. Whether or not that changes now, Aldo ain't here and everything else, and a new guy in, don't know.
I think it's a good opportunity.
Told me that Millwall don't sign foreign players, so they don't put anyone up to them.
It's a stigma, isn't it? I suppose, but I think it's maybe a good time at the moment. Maybe with no crowds there, the game's kind of changed the way it plays a little bit, and maybe it is a good opportunity to get a couple of foreign players in on loan signings and maybe see how they are. You never know; it could be something that works out well. I think criticism a lot is, Sorry.
Jimmy was French.
He came from Plymouth Argyle on the free transfer, so he already had a taste of the English league. So
when was Mick Harford at the club?
He was under Lomas, wasn't he? 2013 sort of times.
There was apparently they said they were sending him to France or something to scout for players. I don't think he was seen again, was he? I think he just got pissed up on the ferry and forgot what he was going for, and he just came back again.
Yeah, he was probably steaming by the time he got to the ferry, wasn't he?
Like the only Fools and Horses trip to France, where once he got there, he was too pissed to scout any players. But
sorry, Mick, if you're watching this.
Yeah. I mean,
allegedly you were drinking on the ferry. Only allegedly.
But no, I think that's the closest we've come to scouting the continent, which is and like I say, I brings you back to Bob Pearson again, and a story about one of the only players that he signed that was outside of the London area, because he had this very strict sort of region, sort of channel that he worked, and it was all because a fellow called a striker called Alan McKenna was on Rangers books, and he was being messed about, and I think he was in his local pub moaning about it, or he was with his dad in the pub moaning about it. Word got round to a friend who knew Bob Pearson, phoned Bob Pearson, said, look, Rangers got this bloke, he's not happy. 24 hours later, he had him down playing he had George Petchey watching him for a practice match, and they signed him, and that's how quick he used to work, and that's what he used to do.
That's Jock, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know Jock really well. Yeah, I had Jock on. I done a show with Jock last year or whatever. And yeah, he's a fantastic. We can always get him on another show. He's great. He's a great answer to Alex Jackson. Got no idea on Campbell, but we will speak in the week to the guy who leaked that story in the Motherwell paper, and we should be able to give you some feedback on next week's show, mate.
I think a lot of that is.
I've got a feeling that's a signing for next season.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's it though, because he's rumoured to be his contract expires at the end of the season. I think if anyone out of the Scottish leagues he could talk to get a contract, which I think maybe adds another dynamic in there. Maybe that's the problem we've got where because he's got other options from afar and wide and that can afford to maybe not pay him a transfer fee. Maybe they can give him a bit more wages, which could be a problem. We'll end on the last comment from Linus here. We need a Swede in Millwall. What was the last Swedish player to play for Millwall? There's one, if ever. That's a little bit of a stat of trivia there. I couldn't really.
Swedish player to play.
I could not tell you. No, Scandinavia. What about if we brought in a little bit more? Anyone?
Paul Huberts.
No,
there was also the defender, wasn't there? The lad that
only played
one game.
What about Hoijveld? Where's he from? Hoijveld. Where was he from?
Was he Dutch, Hoijveld?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but he was the guy that played one game, didn't he?
Oh, Renigi, that's it. Adam Scanlan's on it. That's it. Matthias Renigi, the striker on loan from Watford. There you go. Yeah, remember him, Renigi.
Omar's brain. The way Omar's brain works, his powers just went striker on loan for Watford, and Omar's just gone, oh yeah, I know the name. Straight off the top there. Got no idea what he's on about. He's just literally striker on loan, Watford. Oh yeah, I know that is off. Yeah.
I forgot about Renigi, but there you go. Yeah, he was the lanky one that played one or two games. It's right there. And it does remind me of little sparks of stuff. So, but yeah, I appreciate the comments and I think all the interaction, guys. And obviously, Merv, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll be back. Sunday? We'll do a little review show from the game, boys. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, don't forget, Wednesday we've got Wednesday's show is a super duper special show. we have got the musical legend Steve Harley from the Cockney Rebel, and he's done a Who Are You with us, and talking about his time supporting Millwall and some other bits and pieces around there, his music, his love of Millwall, and he's a genuine lowest bloke. Superb. Great interview. I done with him, and his time with Millwall, he loves it. He's not so, obviously doesn't get to follow it as much as he does, but talking about the 50s and 60s era, there'll be some short videos coming out over the weekend towards Wednesday's release, but that'll be on podcast, and that'll definitely be one you don't want to miss.
And then the following week, we've got another former player interview.
Yeah, and we go back to those.
Last night. I'm not going to say who it is just yet, but he was absolutely blinding, this guy. There was no subject off limits, and it was really insightful, really, really thoughtful, and it's just another brilliant former player interview. I know we say this all the time, but we're actually raising the bar with him. Is that the Sean Devine that used to play for us?
I'm thinking that.
Don't believe so, no.
You actually come back in a minute and go, yes, I am.
If he is Sean, if you are the Sean Devine that played for us, drop us a message and we'll do a former player interview with you.
Just guys, if you like this, obviously let us know. And remember, we're back next Friday, 8 p.m. Make sure you tell your pals and get on board. Sorry, Omar, I cut you off there. Go for that.
That's it. No, make sure to check us out on social media. Obviously, That Millwall Podcast on Twitter, at That Millwall Podcast everywhere, pretty much. And we'll be back next week, and obviously back next Friday, 8 o'clock with our usual slot. See you guys soon.
Up the Lions.
Thanks a lot.